Whakatohea te taura I taku kaki, kia Ngāi Tahu I taku waiata. I'm going to share with you a story about my ancestor Mokomoko. Mokomoko lived in the 1800s. He was a rangatira from Te Whakatohea in the Bay of Plenty. His father signed the treaty, and Mokomoko was described as an intelligent man, a farmer, a person who had good relationships with settlers. He was able to read and write and had knowledge of the Bible. He was baptized into the Anglican Church the day before he was executed. Mokomoko was charged with the murder of Reverend Carl Wagner. He protested his innocence, but decided to surrender himself to authorities on the belief that his whenua and his family would be protected from harm. He stood trial in the Auckland High Court along with others. There were several issues with the trial. There was one lawyer for several accused. Witnesses favourable to Mokomoko were not called. And the lawyer at the time didn't do a good job in putting forward a case for Mokomoko. As he stood at the gallows about to be sentenced to death with others, Mokomoko said, "Heoi no e Pākehā mā, e mate hara kore ana hau, hei aha. Farewell Pākehā, I die an innocent man, so be it." It wasn't until 2011 that Mokomoko was formally pardoned by the Minister Peter Sharples. Today, I stand here as a direct descendant of Mokomoko. He is my great-great-great-great-grandfather. I'm inspired by Mokomoko and his words o whakatauaki, tangohia te taura I taku kaki, ke Ngāi Tahu I taku waiata. Remove the noose from my neck so that I may sing. Those are words that inspire me in my role in the criminal justice system as a defender of those that have suffered. So, are prisons working? What do prisons actually do? Well, there's an enormous problem. As a society, we are eager to punish and isolate those that commit harm, but we don't tend to look at the reasons for why someone might commit a crime. For many, it's the way that they're brought up. Crime is a normal part of their life. For some, drugs and alcohol play a huge part in why they commit crimes. 90% of people in prison have a diagnosable mental health illness or suffer from a substance abuse. Others, it's poverty, which has led to crime. Since the 1950s, New Zealand's rate of incarceration has steadily increased. We're close to holding 11,000 people in prison, which is double the amount that were in custody 20 years ago. For Māori, the statistics are very grim. You probably all know them already. Māori make up 15% of our population. For Māori males, they are 50% of the prison population, and the figure for Māori females is even worse. They represent around 60% of the female prison population. According to Morna Jackson, the rise in Māori incarceration came at a time in the 1950s when Māori moved away from their traditional lands to cities in search of work. This led to generations being disconnected from their culture and hence turning to crime as a result of poverty. That issue is something I see every day in the court. Many of my clients are young Māori who are disillusioned and who are lost. They may not know who they are, where they come from, their whakapapa, but they're proud to be Māori. For them, they are much more comfortable in a courtroom or a prison than a marae. The reality is that they are more accustomed to courts and prisons because those are the places they've been to with their parents and grandparents, uncles and aunties. Those are places of socialising. They're normal to them. So my fear is that prisons will replace marae as our institutions for generations. That is a really sad outcome. I want to say that prisons aren't a holiday camp. They are dark, soul-destroying and intimidating places. Many of them are named, have Māori names, Paremoremo, or Parry, as it's known to many people. Wiri, Remutaka. The one prison that I want to share with you is a prison that I visit the most. That's a youth prison in South Auckland, and they hold people as young as 13. It's called Korowai Manaki. If I was to say to my client the word Korowai, they think of a youth prison in South Auckland. Korowai Manaki has a very different meaning for those that understand te reo Māori. A Korowai Manaki is a place of nurturing and support. A youth prison, which isolates people from their whānau, is the total opposite of that. So not only has the criminal justice system colonised generations of Māori, but it has misappropriated our language along the way. Are prisons a good investment? Prisons are a costly and inefficient investment, and they aren't working. Since 2005, the amount that we are spending on prisons has doubled, and since 1997, it's tripled. We are spending 3 times GDP on prisons, and it's one of the fastest growing government sectors in terms of spending. It costs about $100,000 per year to house someone in a prison. It's costly, it's inefficient, it doesn't solve those underlying issues. It puts the issue out of sight and out of mind for a short while. It's a short-sighted and knee-jerk reaction to a much, much deeper issue. Those that are released from prisons are likely to be reincarcerated, so go back to prison, about half of them within 2 years. So that tells you that they're not working. Why has our prison population drastically increased? The crime rate in New Zealand hasn't increased to correspond with that drastic increase in incarceration. So what is the reason for why we have one of the highest incarceration rates in the world? I'm going to propose 2 reasons. First is a thing called penal populism, which I'll explain shortly, and the second reason is the media. Successive governments have campaigned in the last 20 years on law and order, getting tough on crime, otherising those that commit crime, and playing into our moral panic and fear of criminal offending. This has led to harsher bail laws, longer sentences, and tougher parole laws being passed into law. That's why I say there's been such a drastic increase. Secondly, is the media reporting on crime. Crime sells. Sensationalising crime sells. And of course I have sympathy and understand that when we see horrible crimes committed that may put us in fear. But the reality is that applying a blanket approach to all criminals is not the answer. We need to look at the underlying causes of why they get there in the first place, not pass tougher laws. I'm not alone in what I say today. In fact, the Chief Scientific Advisor to this government released a report on the criminal justice system. And in that report, the Chief Advisor said, we successive governments are imprisoning more people in response to dogma, not data, responding to shifting policies and media panic, instead of evidence-based approaches to prevention, intervention, imprisonment, and rehabilitation. Prisons are a moral and fiscal failure, no doubt. And is the answer to build more prisons? No. Well, what can we do? Fortunately, there are some solutions. It's not all doom and gloom. And some of those solutions I'll propose to you today are here in Aotearoa at the moment. The first is Te Kōti Rangatahi, Te Kōti Tai Tamariki. This is a youth court that sits on the marae. It's my happy place. It's the place that I like going to the most as my role as a youth advocate. This is a court where the judge is Māori, where kaumātua, elders, sit alongside the judge to help reconnect that young person who's committed a crime back to their culture. And I want to share with you something that happened just this week. I went to the marae court and with a young person. That young person appeared. The elders and judge took a real interest in this young person, asked them what he wants to do with his life, what his goals are. After court, he walked out, and as we walked towards our cars, he said to me, why aren't all courts like this? That's a very good question. It tells you that this young person was inspired and had a good experience in this court versus a mainstream court where people are treated like cattle. There is one equivalent for adults, and that's in Kaikohe, Te Matariki Court, Te Kōti Matariki. That's a good example as well, using Māori customs to address offending, reconnecting that person with community social services. That is one great example, but it's only limited at this stage. We need to roll this out and make it the normal court. The second example is alcohol and other drug treatment courts. These are courts which were started in Auckland. They're designed to keep people out of prison by addressing the underlying causes of why someone might commit a crime. Drugs and alcohol, as I said, often is a big contributor. This court allows someone to remain in the community in intensive drug rehabilitation, and the success is in the statistics. So far, The reduction in reoffending is about 15% better than mainstream courts, so this is working, and I'm pleased to say that our government intends on expanding these courts as well. So, there are some examples that are working in New Zealand, but they're quite limited at this stage. We need to do more, and I'm going to talk about some examples overseas. The first is in Norway. Scandinavia is in the lead in the way that they think about the criminal justice system. Norway incarcerates people at roughly half the rate that we incarcerate, and their rate of reoffending is 20%, one of the lowest in the world. So that tells me they're doing something right. What Norway does is it focuses on rehabilitation rather than punishment. This is a prison in Norway. As you can see, there are no large bars across the windows. The kitchens are fully equipped with sharp knives, and proof is in the pudding. As I said, the rate of reoffending is very low. Secondly is Finland. They have roughly the same crime rate as New Zealand, but a much lower rate of incarceration, of imprisoning. And that's because they've invested more in the issues, the front-end issues, things like rehabilitation, treatment, avoiding prison. New Zealand invests more at the back end, the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. The Noose, they invest in building more prisons. It's common sense. Next is the Netherlands. They've closed a staggering 19 prisons lately. This is a prison which was converted into a refugee centre. Lastly is Portugal. They've decriminalised all possession of drug offences in 2011. So if someone's found with a small amount of drugs, they may be given a fine, a warning, or sent to a committee made up of a lawyer, a doctor, and a social worker who focuses on how can we help you overcome your addiction, what services can we offer you, rather than shipping that person to prison. So there are some examples overseas that are working. New Zealand is seen as an innovator, as a leader in science. We were the first country to give women the vote. We are a progressive country, and prisons are a moral failure. We need to change the way that we relate to the criminal justice system. We need to transform our thinking. We have the resources in our Te Ao Māori thinking and restorative justice. We have the resources from examples overseas. Fundamentally, we need to change our own attitudes to crime. View crime as not something that needs to be put out of sight and out of mind, but as something that needs to be addressed through treatment. So, it starts with us. We need to remove the noose of incarceration from our thinking. Tangohia te taura I taku kaki, ke waiata au I taku waiata. Tēnā koutou katoa.